listeners, and welcome to the Downright Upright Show, the place to go to hear out loud and proud what Minnesotans are thinking. And I am your host, Philip Anthony. Thank you for choosing to join us today. And I hope everyone is doing fantabulous. You remember that, right? Fantastic and fabulous, put together, twice as nice, saves time. So, and you guys are in for a treat. I have an amazing guest today. She is the CEO of Planned Parenthood North Central States. I want to make sure I said that right because it's a mouthful.
Hey, Philip, I'm going to start us over here. Go move the mic a little closer to you right now. Yeah, make sure it's a little more in front of you. Here, we can start.
Listeners, and welcome to the Downright Upright Show, the place to go to hear out loud and proud what Minnesotans are thinking. And I am your host, Philip Anthony. Thank you all for choosing to join us today, and I hope everyone is doing fantabulous. And fantabulous is fantastic. Fabulous put together twice as nice, saves a lot of time. And my special guest today is the CEO of Planned Parenthood North Central States and former state representative. She happened to be my state representative, and we miss you, but you're doing great work. Ruth Richardson. Yay, Ruth. Hi, welcome to the Downright Upright Show.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Again.
Yes.
It was fun the first time.
It was.
But I was a little wet behind the ears at the first
You were great.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
She's so amazing, guys. I was just a podcast at that time. Now, this is the second show that's broadcast on the radio, so I'm so thrilled that I finally got to this part of my show and it reached this peak, I guess is the term to use. So again, thank you for joining me again, Ruth. It's amazing to see you again. It's been a while. I think you were on in how long ago was it? A year and a half ago or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. We got to stay in touch. So you were a guest on the show last year, and you were representing District 52B, which was mine, in the State House. And at that time, I was one of your constituents. On that show last year, you discussed your beginnings, like where you were born, raised. So for the radio audience, the podcast audience already knows you, but let's reintroduce you to the radio audience.
Yeah, so I am a Minnesota native, was born and raised in St. Paul in Frogtown. My parents actually moved to Minnesota from Mississippi before I was born. Grew up in a large family, 7 brothers and sisters, and was the first in my family to go to college and stayed local at the University of Minnesota. Followed that up with William Mitchell College of Law, and have really just been, focused on a life of service in many ways. And that was something that was really sort of ingrained in me as a child.
Mm-hmm. Before you did the political stuff, what did you have a different occupation that led to you becoming a state house member?
Well, the interesting thing is I always refer to myself as an accidental politician because there was no strategic plan that got me to the Minnesota State House. That was not on my bingo card, actually. I did a lot of work when I was in high school and college with youth and like after school programs. I was a freedom school teacher. My first job, interestingly enough, was actually at the state capitol. And I gave tours to youth groups. So like kids would come in from elementary school and I would give tours of the Capitol. And as like I was like the third youngest of my brothers and sisters, so I was used to following the herd. I didn't have a great sense of direction, so I used to get lost in the Capitol all the time with a bunch of kids. It was a good time.
Well, you were a state house member. You sponsored the paid family and medical leave program, and
Yes.
thank you for that. That's amazing. It's right now there's people out there that you've completely changed their lives. And I recall that there was a famous photograph of you standing next to Governor Walz as he signed the bill into law. That I don't know why that's ingrained in my brain. It's just because I opened the paper and there you are, and it was wow.
It was an amazing day.
It was.
Yeah.
What were your feelings when you saw the governor sign your bill basically into law?
Well, it was a bill that I had worked on for a number of years. And even before I started working on the bill had been around for over a decade. So there were several legislators over the years that had worked on this bill for paid family and medical leave. So to be the person holding the baton at the moment that we finally were able to get this passed in both the House and the Senate, just recognizing the impact that it is going to have for Minnesotans and for families. It's really hard to describe how amazing that experience was to be at a point that we are going to be able to ensure that all folks have the ability to take care of themselves and to take care of their loved ones when they need to, because we know it's a universal need. At some point, all of us are going to need, either medical leave or family leave.
Yeah, and to keep their job.
Exactly.
Because there are certain jobs that if you did not show up at work and you are taking care of a sick family, they let you go.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's why this
Oh my
is,
God.
yeah, and that's why this is so important.
Yeah.
And we also recognize that while this is going to be new for Minnesotans, it's something that basically the rest of the world does. So I'm like, we can figure this out too.
Yeah. Why not? The
Yeah.
rest of the world could do it. We could, and we're the richest country in the world. Hello, maybe we could do this, right? And to piggyback on that previous question, what were some other important bills that were eventually signed into law by the governor that you took part in? Because you, on the last show, I think you mentioned a few. So can you just remind us about some of those bills?
Yeah. Just kind of thinking of some of the bills that I was able to get across the finish line in the 5 years at the Capitol. Paid family medical leave was probably the largest, like
Of course,
in terms of thinking about some of the most transformational. But I'm also really proud of the work that I did around substance use disorders and mental health, ensuring that pregnant and parenting people could have access to the services and supports that they needed. Really proud of that. We became the first state in the nation to create an office for missing and murdered Black women and girls. So made
we
history.
were the first state.
We were the first state. Yeah.
Really?
Mhm.
Wow.
The first state
Good for you.
yeah, first state to do that, and really proud of that accomplishment. Got a bill across the finish line a couple of bills to prevent catalytic converter theft.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Yes, and it's actually down. Thefts are actually down in Minnesota, and so that is really
You have her to thank.
good news. Suicide prevention training for teachers.
Weren't you also a part of the Crown Act?
Yes, part of the Crown Act, and also did a lot of work around maternal health. So the Dignity in Pregnancy and Childbirth Act bill, expanding postnatal coverage. So those first 12 weeks after giving birth, that individuals could get up to 3 visits that would be covered by insurance as opposed to one visit at 6 weeks, knowing that it's a vulnerable time, right? Like after giving birth, and recognizing that being able to get access to comprehensive care postnatally can also reduce maternal mortality. So lots of work around reducing maternal mortality, infant mortality, and some environmental things too, to ensure that we were replenishing funds that had been taken away from the Metropolitan Landfill Contingency Trust Fund. And those funds are so important because they ensure that we can keep our water sources and our soil sources that are near landfills contained, so that we're not like polluting those waters or soils.
Yeah. So when we come back after our break, we're going to get into the bailiwick of your career, which is now Planned Parenthood, and how you transitioned. Even though I think you were in Planned Parenthood, but
I was doing both, yeah.
You're doing both, and now you're just concentrating on that. So after these messages, we will be back with the wonderful Ruth Richardson on the Downright Upright Show. Welcome back to the Downright Upright Show. I am your host, Philip Anthony, and I am with Ruth Richardson. She is amazing, and we're going to talk about her work with Planned Parenthood. This is an important subject. It touched my family, and I'll talk about it later, but I want you to talk about what Planned Parenthood is doing for our community. So let's start with how you transitioned, because again, I just learned this before when we started the show, that you were doing both. You were doing State House and Planned Parenthood at the same time. So how did it transition to just Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, really interesting. The sort of my journey to Planned Parenthood, much like being a politician, there wasn't a strategic plan that got me to Planned Parenthood, but I really think it's a reflection of me walking within sort of my purpose. That's sort of what led me there.
Mm-hmm.
When Roe was overturned and the Dobbs decision was leaked, I was actually at a conference in DC and I got a call from a recruiter. And they said, there's this job at Planned Parenthood North Central States, and your name has come up multiple times from people. And, we wanted to just kind of check in to see if this is something that you might be interested in. And it really kind of caught me off guard. And I got off the phone call. I called my daughter, and I'm like, just got this call from like Planned Parenthood North Central States, and they're asking me if I'm interested in this job. And she's like, "Why are you talking to me? You should be talking to them." And this was around the time that the Dobbs decision had leaked, right? And I had read the Dobbs decision, and when I read the Dobbs decision, what had really struck me was how far back they were really trying to go when you read that leaked decision. Because I kept hearing people saying like this decision is going to push us back like 50 years, and I'm like, no, this decision's trying to push us back like 250 years to like an original intent reading of the Constitution, when people that looked like me were not considered to be humans. Right, or to be protected by the Constitution, because I could see very clearly not only were they coming for access to abortion, but they were coming for contraceptives. They were coming for marriage equality. And, I was seeing these conversations where people were talking about how Brown versus Board of Education and like separate but equal should be like, states' rights. And it really was sort of an impetus for me to say, like, this is, I've really dedicated my life to service. And in this moment at this time, it was really important that I did this.
Yeah. And I think that this Supreme Court we're talking about, was molded to do this. This was the mission that the ex-president, twice impeached, 91 times indicted president, was his intention, because he said that was a litmus test for people to be on the Supreme Court. That was unheard of. You never heard a president say, well, what's your view on blah, blah, blah? And then they would pick that person. I mean, that's insane. And so, and that's why, to me, we need to vote. We need to get out and express how important women's health is. We have to maybe, like we did in Minnesota, pass states, each state pass laws to protect women's health. So this is an umbrella question, but it's very general. Why is this is an obvious question for you and I, but why is women's reproductive health care such an important lifeline to their wellness? What, give us the nuts and bolts of that.
I think that when people think about what we've been hearing so much about like access to abortion care, they really think of it like really narrowly.
Hmm.
And what, at Planned Parenthood North Central States, one of the things that we are really cognizant of and we spend a lot of time educating about is how interconnected our health is as we think about sexual and reproductive health.
Hmm.
Because what we know is the states with the most restrictive abortion laws, they have the highest rates of maternal mortality. They have the highest rates of infant mortality, and those are consequences of not having access to a comprehensive range of sexual and reproductive healthcare services. And when you restrict access to one form of healthcare, it actually harms communities overall because you see situations of maternity healthcare deserts increasing because you begin to lose providers, right? And you also see things increasing like sexually transmitted infections because when you don't have the same resources to screen and treat for STIs, thinking about things like cancer screenings, all of those things are really critical. And they're all interrelated when you think about comprehensive sexual and reproductive health care. And so I think it's really important that people understand when we're restricting access to a form of health care, it causes harm.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for bringing up the fact that because the right wing, their mantra is Planned Parenthood abortion. That's
Mhm,
it. That's all it does. And you brought up women's health care in general.
mhm.
I mean, this could be the only access to healthcare that women have in their community, and it's an amazing organization for that reason. And rich people can always rich women could just get on an airplane and fly to a different place and get an abortion if they need one. It's the poor people that suffer and that go through the healthcare issues and blah blah blah. So yeah, we have to realize that we have to change the message. We have to say the Planned Parenthood is a women's health organization, not the abortion thing is the right wing's way of addressing it. Correct?
Well, and you bring up a very important point because abortion bans don't ban abortions for everyone.
No,
They only ban abortions for people
poor
who don't
people.
have the means or the opportunity to
Exactly.
travel.
Exactly.
And so understanding that I think that is really important. And as an organization, we are unapologetically providing the full spectrum of sexual and reproductive health care, and that includes abortion care. And there's so much stigma around abortion care when it's health care just like everything else.
Correct.
And so that I think is really important for people to understand. And with the work that we do at Planned Parenthood, in addition to abortion care, we provide vasectomies, we provide cancer screenings, we provide mental health services, and we're always thinking about ways that we can be sort of more holistic in terms of meeting the needs of communities because as a nonprofit healthcare provider,
Mhm.
we are oftentimes that safety net, right? We see individuals who have the ability to pay, but we also see individuals who don't. And I even think back to like my first interaction with Planned Parenthood when I was a college student and I didn't have insurance. and I didn't have a lot of money. And I had lived with like debilitating pain for all of my teens and didn't know why. Had been to many doctors, had been to emergency rooms, and had my pain dismissed for years. And it wasn't until I found Planned Parenthood that I was treated with empathy, I was listened to, and I was put on a path that allowed me to live without chronic and debilitating pain for the first time in my life.
Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Wow. That's
Mhm.
powerful. I mean, these are messages we have to get out, Ruth. We really do. I mean, the right wing has, they're putting this label on Planned Parenthood that, I mean, yes, you do provide abortion care, but it's not just that. There's so many issues that Planned Parenthood, confronts and takes care of. It is, mental health. I mean, women that come in stressed out about, what's going on, they do provide health care, mental health care for that woman as well. Now, I want to get into the OBGYNs because this is another really important issue. It has been reported that many OBGYNs are leaving the red states because they cannot practice all, capital letters, all aspects of their specialty. How dangerous is it if many of these doctors leave these red states and it becomes more difficult to get full essential health care for childbearing people?
It's extremely dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
And, and with Planned Parenthood North Central states, we cover the Midwest, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska. And let me use Iowa as an example right now, who has seen a number of providers leave the state. 33 of Iowa's counties are maternal health deserts. There's zero maternal health care there. And, I know that we talked about previously a little bit about the maternal health crisis that we have, maternal mortality. We know nationally, Black women are 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy related cause.
Absolutely.
And you can
Yep.
control for all the factors, education, income, access to insurance, like housing, general overall health, nutrition. You can control for all those things.
Right.
Family status, mental health status, still more likely to die. Well, in Iowa, they're 6 times more likely to die from a pregnancy related cause, right? And so you see when you have these not only restrictions on access to abortion care, but you have the sort of the fallout from that when you have people who are thinking about where they want to put down roots and where they want to practice medicine and wanting to be able to provide the full like to work to the top of their license. We're seeing those implications as people are leaving states. And it's not just about banning abortion. It is about there is a fear that comes with practicing within a state where you don't know whether you're going to be criminalized. And no one wants to go to work every day sort of questioning like, am I going to be prosecuted today for doing what I've been trained to do? And so there's been a real sort of chilling effect that is impacting not only patients, but providers. And there's also the state of like mass confusion because now we have a patchwork quilt of laws. And when you ask the general person what's legal within their state, oftentimes they don't know. And that's why since Dobbs has been overturned, we've helped across our affiliate more than 2,000 people get to their abortion appointments with our patient navigators, because oftentimes people are calling and saying, I don't know if it's legal because, I heard about the state law that was introduced. I don't know if it was passed. I don't know if I can use Plan B. I don't know if I can get access to, mifepristone. There's a state of confusion, and I just think it's important that people recognize that this is manufactured confusion. This has been the long game approach to all of this.
Oh yeah, that goes without saying. I mean, look, if I were an OBGYN and a woman comes in and I'm taking care of her and she's pregnant. And in the 7th month, I don't care what month it is. That's why when you hear Republicans say, they want abortions up till the time of birth. Yeah, maybe. I mean, if the mother is going to die and there's sepsis going on, there's something going on, and without the abortion, the woman could die. Yeah, yeah. And I think every OBGYN takes a Hippocratic oath, correct? Am I wrong? And what's the Hippocratic oath say? Do no harm.
It's about doing no harm. Mm-hmm.
Take care of that person.
Yeah.
You have to take care of that woman, she or the childbearing person, and make sure that they are cared for. That's the target for me in my head. So anyway, what do you think about people or doctors in this case, OBGYNs, leaving and going all leaving and going to blue states and leaving these women and childbearing people in these red states with hardly any access?
Well, what we have started to see is a trend of not only providers, leaving states, but we're also seeing more people travel across state lines to get access to healthcare.
Yeah, I wonder if I hate to interrupt you here, but are you finding that a lot of childbearing people are going into the blue states and overwhelming the Planned Parenthoods in the blue states?
I mean, we've seen across our region over like a 25% like increase in terms of people coming into our region for abortion care, specifically, and just in terms of like as far away as Florida, Texas, Louisiana.
Yeah.
We have seen this influx of folks that have been coming in, and I think what's really important is not only are we seeing people coming in from states where abortion has been restricted or banned, we're also seeing people coming in from states where abortion is still legal because they don't know if it's still legal within their state, because they hear so many things, right, on the news in terms of court cases that are pending, or they're hearing about like bills that have been introduced, and it creates this confusion.
It's fog, yeah. I mean, people don't know if maybe I need to go to Minnesota because I don't know if I can get care.
Well, they hear about like the PRO Act, which was passed, the Protect Reproductive Options Act that was passed last legislative session. And so they see that coverage and it's like, well, I know I can go to Minnesota and get access to abortion care, but might be thinking they are confused in their own state if they can get access.
Have you noticed Minnesota is like a beacon? I mean, for everything, and for women's health, for LGBTQ people. I mean, there's trans people coming here, and I talk about this a lot, that I was at Pride, and I did a Pride show. Brett was with me when we were there, and a lot of the trans people we interviewed at Pride said, we came here because we wanted to be ourselves. We were scared in the state we were in. So Minnesota, thank you, and thank the governor for everything, and the DFL, of which you were a member. And it's a beacon.
Well, and you bring up a really important point about gender affirming care as well, which is also a service that Planned Parenthood provides. And what we saw last legislative session, there were more than 500 anti-LGBTQ plus bills that were introduced across the United States. And so again, you have sort of this attack on healthcare, but at the same time that was happening, within states, we also saw in Minnesota, we passed the Trans Refuge Act. Right. And
you were in Congress when you were in the
House. At the State House. Yes. Was very proud to vote for the PRO Act and also for the Trans Refuge bill as well. And we hear those stories, right? We hear those stories about people who are making decisions to move to Minnesota because they want to be in an environment that is inclusive and that is affirming for their loved ones.
Mhm.
And we're also seeing that more young folks, more millennials, and like Gen Z are moving to Minnesota because when you have a focus on things like paid family medical leave, when you are increasing access to healthcare rather than limiting it, those are things that are really appealing for people. And while Minnesota is doing some amazing things, what I don't want to get lost is that even before Roe was overturned, we had access issues, right? We had challenges in terms of ensuring that people had equitable access to healthcare. Because prior to Roe being overturned, there were challenges for low income people. There were challenges, for people of color and for gender expansive individuals. They've worsened, right, after Roe was overturned. But I think it's important that we also just like highlight with all of the important, incredible steps that we have taken forward, there's still some pretty significant disparities that we see.
There's always more work to do.
Yes, for our,
Yes,
exactly.
Don't think that this is the Minnesota. If we keep the DFL in power and we keep Governor Walz there and we have, we can have more. We can have more care and more pro-LGBT laws and down the road, down the line, I should say. I have another question about this. If it is discovered that a childbearing person in a red state has an anomaly in the late stages of their pregnancy and could possibly die, why is the quote, life of the mother, remember that you always hear that, life of the mother, all of a sudden ignored or irrelevant, such as in the case of Kate Cox? They're saying there's life of the mother is an exception, but it's really not, is it, Ruth?
Well, I think it comes down to the old Maya Angelou saying, when they show you who they are, believe them. I think that I think that part of this, and what's really important there, we have heard a lot with states that have put restrictions on abortion, this idea of exceptions. And I think what the Kate Cox case tells us is that exceptions are not really exceptions, and the and behind each of these laws and the implications of these laws, because it can. I don't think people are always sort of thinking about the human impact and the implications behind these laws. And Kate Cox is one face, right? And so kind of the world was watching when you have this individual whose life is at stake. She has the courts telling her that no, um, this does not meet the
Yeah,
threshold.
where do you draw the line
Well,
when you're on death's door? I mean, where do they come up with this life of the mother exception?
but I think what's interesting here is Kate Cox had opportunity to travel out of state.
That's a good point. Yes, she
Where
did.
this is also happening with people who don't have the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so the names of folks that we are not necessarily hearing that have had sepsis and died, or the individuals who wanted children and had sepsis, and now they're unable to conceive as a result of being denied care. And there are individuals who are being told, like, we know that you are going to develop sepsis at one point, but until you come back like when you're dying,
Yeah,
and then we'll try to treat you. And that's not the way that any of this is supposed to work.
No. So, I wish we had more time. I mean, we have 2 minutes for this segment, but I want to end on this question here before we get to the shift, which is the opinion section of the show, the last 10 minutes. What is Planned Parenthood and its attorneys doing to fight back against states that force 10-year-old girls that were raped to give birth? Is there anything we can do about that? Because that to me is sick. That is absolutely insane.
Well, we were actually successful last year at the Iowa Supreme Court in defeating a 6-week ban. Shortly after that victory, the Iowa legislature went back and passed the exact same law. So we are once again at the Supreme Court. We have a temporary restraining order. So abortion is still legal in Iowa today. We also have a Supreme Court case that's pending in Nebraska as well. But in addition to sort of those legal routes that we are taking to try to protect access, we also have a team of abortion patient navigators, and we have LGBTQ plus navigators as well that are helping people from around the U.S. get to their appointments.
Wow, that's amazing. So after we take a quick break, we're going to get to the shift, which is a part of the show that is opinion. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to throw some balls out to you and see if you can catch them. And but stay tuned. We're going to be back after these messages, and we'll be speaking to Ruth Richardson about her opinions on current events. Love you. Be back.
Come on, juvenile, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now.
Welcome back to the Downright Upright Show. I'm your host, Philip Anthony, and today's guest is Ruth Richardson. And we've been talking about Planned Parenthood and how wonderful it is as an aid and help to women and childbearing people throughout Minnesota, Iowa, North Dakota. Maybe miss a state here or there, but you got to help me with that. So now we've come to the part of the show I like to call the shift, where we shift the questioning away from your personal journey and to your opinions on current events. But don't forget to say the F and shift, because then we have a problem with the sponsor.
Especially on the radio airwaves now, yeah.
I know. This is my, second show, yeah. So we got to watch out. We have to say shift it.
I remember the F.
Yeah, remember the F. So here's an update on the Kate Cox story that I'm sure you've all heard about. Kate successfully got an abortion in a neighboring state, New Mexico, I believe, and is now pursuing a lawsuit against the state of Texas. Yay! And if she doesn't win, I'm going to be furious. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about that, Ruth?
Well, I think it really shows that exceptions aren't really exceptions, and that when you have individuals that are laser focused on controlling other people's reproductive health, it is extremely dangerous. Kate's life was at stake.
Oh, yeah.
And she could not get access to care and
Mhm.
had to travel. And, thankful that she had the privilege to be able to do that, because that doesn't happen with everyone. And when I think of Kate Cox's case and I think of what is happening in Idaho, and
Yeah.
there's a case that's going to the US Supreme Court that would eliminate abortion access for exceptions
Oh,
as well. So
my
I think
goodness.
Kate's story is the tip of the iceberg here. And what is truly frightening is that the lower court's decision is standing while the Supreme Court is waiting to hear this case. So there is basically no access for individuals, even with exceptions. And that is incredibly dangerous. And in many of these states, it is more dangerous to be pregnant today than it was a decade ago or 20 years
Oh,
ago
yeah.
or 30 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And where does the state, again, this is mind-boggling. Where does the state draw the line about where death, where the woman is about to die, and if there's no exception, I guess what happens? She just die. I mean, you just let her die. I mean,
Well, and I think
nuts.
when we talk about the maternal mortality crisis in this country
Yeah.
right now, when you look at the statistics, what we know is that over 84% of the deaths that happen within the United States are preventable.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a manufactured crisis because it doesn't have to be this way. And so to continue to see people doubling down on harmful and deadly policies it's
crazy,
infuriating.
Oh yeah, yeah. No words.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let's piggyback on Kate Cox, and now we'll talk about Brittany Watts. This is another story that infuriated me. Brittany Watts is a 34-year-old Ohio woman, and she was charged with a felony for, quote, and I never heard of this, abuse of a corpse. I don't know what that means, but maybe you could tell us. After she miscarried in her bathroom and was later admitted to a hospital for a life-threatening hemorrhage. Oh my goodness. A grand jury later decided not to charge her. Well, big of them, right? In your opinion, how dangerous is this for women who have similar experiences in anti-choice states? And can certain states claim a woman gave herself the abortion and charge her with a felony?
Well, one of the things that I think it's really important to know is that prior to Brittany miscarrying, she had been at the hospital multiple times trying to get help. And so recognizing that something was sort of off in the healthcare space because she had multiple visits
I heard that, yeah.
to emergency rooms, and while we don't know sort of all the details, that's sort of a question mark because there are so many sort of what seem like misses in this case, and I was really relieved to hear that charges were not going to be filed, but it doesn't undo the damage and trauma that
Yes.
she experienced. And what I think is important to sort of lift up, we know that miscarriage is very common
Yes.
in this country. And we also know that when an individual is going to seek medical care and they're looking for affirming care, what they're not looking for is for someone to call like law enforcement on them, for them to be arrested for having a miscarriage. But we also know that there are huge disparities in terms of who gets the police called on them in situations. And we see overwhelmingly that it's typically Black and brown bodies. So Black and Indigenous communities are the most likely to have that experience. And so just thinking about the chilling effect that this has for communities.
Yeah.
When people are in need of help, you want them to be able to trust that they can go to a healthcare provider and get the care that they need. But situations like this are oftentimes, I think, they have down the road implications. Well, people will not seek care. And perhaps put themselves at even greater risk health-wise as a result of that. But the to start to criminalize individuals for having a miscarriage is nothing but cruel.
Oh my goodness. And this is Ohio, right? So let's say the same thing happened in another state. Maybe the charges would have been dropped. See, that's another thing. You're going to charge a woman or a childbearing person who, through no fault of her own, had a miscarriage, and now you're going to put her in jail. This is possible, folks. This is not, I'm not talking hyperbole or making up, threatening stories or anything. This can happen.
Well,
right, Ruth?
Well, if you look back, most states have a case similar to Brittany Watts somewhere.
Yeah.
And so just recognizing that decisions to criminalize individuals around miscarriage is so it's so wrong on so many different levels.
So many levels, yes. And the last question before we end the show, because we have only 3 minutes. What do you think the Supreme Court will do regarding the accessibility of mifepristone, which is the abortion pill, if you want to call it that, to the general public, and why is that pharmaceutical so important to women and childbearing people?
Well, so there were two questions that were put before the Supreme Court as it relates to mifepristone, the one of the drugs that is used for medication abortion. I was pretty relieved that the first question the court declined to hear, and that was the question of whether mifepristone should remain on the market. Because what these individuals were seeking to do, they wanted to overturn the FDA's approval of mifepristone that happened over 20 years ago, and say that mifepristone should have never been on the market, so then it would have been completely removed from the market. The court declined to hear that. So regardless of what the Supreme Court decides within this case, mifepristone is going to stay on the market. And that's really good news because it has a 20-year history. It's is safe. It is effective. It's more safe than like ibuprofen and Tylenol. Yeah. So it's good news that is going to stay on the market. So what the court is really considering right now is whether they're going to put restrictions on how mifepristone can be used. And so that's what we're watching very closely. Are they going to try to say it can't be mailed? Are they going to try to say that...
Stay tuned.
Yeah, that you can't have telemedicine, right? So those are the things that we are paying close attention to.
Right.
And we've seen this court in action.
Yeah.
And so it's something that we are paying a lot of attention to. But what we want people to really know and understand is that if there are restrictions that are placed on mifepristone, there's also another medication abortion drug called misoprostol that is available. And while it requires more doses, to accomplish abortion health care, it is something that we are prepared to use if we need to.
Yeah. How we've come to the end of the show. Yeah. I wish we can go on and on. I'm really over time here, but how can you be contacted? And should any audience members want to contact Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, so
questions.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood North Central States. We're in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Nebraska. Google Planned Parenthood North Central States and get in contact with us.
Fabulous. Thank you, Ruth Richardson, for being a guest on the Downright Upright Show. To our listeners, thank you you're welcome. Spending time with us today. Please stay tuned for more of the Downright Upright Show with Philip Anthony. That's me. Hello. And love you all. Stay tuned for more. Bye now.